All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Legend of the Galactic Heroes, episode 36.
I think with this, we are officially at the 1/3 waypoint.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah. 110 episodes?
Basically in between this episode and the next one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow.
Here we are.
Lots of things going on within the large cast of characters.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of touching base with those specific characters in the previous episode. And we set up a bunch of things that seem to be leading in developments on the Empire side of things primarily.
Right. Yes.
Lots of things going on with Reinhard and Hildegard.
And Kier Heiss. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that whole thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the returning expeditionary force that's been completely pulverized.
Mm-hmm.
We have Mittermeier and Ruenthal
who are
observing the goings on and seeing,
yeah,
what side of history do we want to be on?
Exactly.
We'll see. All right, and then we've got heading towards the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Some
the
scheming.
Odd couple.
Yes, the odd couple.
I'm assuming, right?
They should be there already.
Yeah,
based on the scene where it showed them entering in with like their fake IDs.
That's
and
right.
Stuff.
Yes.
But as to like how much they'll be able to do in the immediate sense, it's probably going to take a while before they get even close to Reinhardt.
Right.
So there's that.
Uh-huh.
But on that side of things with Rubinsky and Rubinsky Jr.
Yeah, son.
I swear, I want him to call him Junior, even though it doesn't fit the tone of the show.
It totally doesn't, but
it doesn't fit at all.
He almost did in sort of a meta way of them being like, "Yeah, we're both totally not going to kill each other." Like
you're like, he reminds me of me.
Yeah. It's such an ego-stroking thing to be like, he's my son. I have to take him seriously.
Right.
Like.
Oh my gosh. So that's all going on in their side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the Alliance, they have a little bit of a chance for a breather. Kinda.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
And Julian is officially gonna join the military.
Yeah, someone confirmed it to us that he was a conscript basically beforehand. Mm-hmm. So now it's the question of whether or not he, chooses of his own free will to basically bring his career into a focus specifically with regards to the military.
Good timing, Julian, because things are about to get even crazier than they have been.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now it's just all stuff they basically covered last episode, basically.
Right.
So, this episode, y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion. All right, okay. We've talked now to Lady Anne Rose.
Yeah, we had a couple conversations that were kind of a big deal this episode.
The big one probably being the Hildegard and Reinhard conversation, followed swiftly by the Baltic and Reinhard conversation.
Yeah. And a lot of it was plot stuff, mostly
the Baltic one and Reinhard.
Right. A lot of it got very technical, but there were some other things in there that were very much about the characters and where they were sort of at in their headspace, mentally, emotionally, all that stuff. That will most definitely be relevant.
Fejon wants to have their plan here be something that they use entirely to make as an excuse for them to initiate an alliance with Reinhardt so that he has his excuse to then go and invade the alliance because, oh no, our Kaiser was taken.
Right.
We must realize that there are those still within the Empire that subvert our rule and would even ally with the traitors, the Alliance.
Right, exactly. Which I love. It's a great excuse. It's a great
story to sell to the populace.
Yeah, great story to sell to the populace. And another example of where that sort of youthful idealism and things that now granted Reinhard isn't above using underhanded tactics.
Oh God,
right?
no.
Definitely not. He'll get the job done, But it's one of those things of just an example of what he has to do in his new position of power that is not direct. It's not strategy and tactics in like military combat.
Yeah, but that's, as he said, it's not something that he doesn't like.
Oh yeah. He's all for
just like it just gets repetitive when the actor I'm dealing with is so.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
I'm combining two different lines into one, but basically you can infer he doesn't like doing it with you.
Right.
It's like this is fun, but you
don't talk down to me, man. I know who you are. I know what you guys are all about. Like let's have a good conversation about how we're going to do this,
I do have to say though, I don't want to go into this as a theory. I'm just making this as a note that the whole thing of his acting, I felt like the whole response he gave to the you want to go into our airspace I think that was something that was genuine. But there's a possibility that was the oh no, how could you ask that when it was like no duh, that's going to be the thing that we because I'm asking for. So let's not go into the theory thing.
But I just want to point out that I can't remember whether it was Boltic or whether it's the new guy Kesserling that was talking with Rubinsky about that whole plan. So maybe it's something where like they didn't know about it, or like they wanted to see if they could do this without that, like because if you can avoid giving that up to the Empire, that would be pretty cool.
Sure.
But
So that conversation led to Reinhardt taking control of the diplomacy rather quickly.
Yeah.
He seemed to be very good at adeptly throwing Fejan to the idea of, wait, what if the Alliance and the Empire allied? Then, Fejan could end up being the third that gets gobbled up. You might want to be a little bit more careful with how you do things here.
Mm-hmm.
I do find it really sloppy, though, that this is how Fejan offers an alliance.
Yeah.
Because it's really, really twisty.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine if the Empire basically just, kills them. You just lose out on an opportunity and you guys look bad because you failed whatever your subterfuge thing was.
Right.
The Empire never found out.
Like, maybe for the Empire it's something where, if they ended up making an enemy of Fejan while the Alliance is still around, then Fejan and the Alliance would team up, But it's not like the Fejan would really be able to defend against the Empire. Like, even if they have money, it's not like they have armies,
Well...
they might have some, but,
if you have money, you can
get armies. Yeah.
And I don't think it has to do necessarily with whether or not the Empire would attack Fejan, because I just don't think it's...
necessary?
No, I don't think it's economically smart.
Oh, sure.
That's the problem, is that...
Or it's expensive.
Well, not only that, Fejan owns so much within the Empire of sorts. The idea of them being like, hey, this is a Fejan hotel and that's Fejan wine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, actually, it might be more of a thing of where Fejan is this small, key little touch point in a key point in space, but it's just like, why would you invade Switzerland? Like, literally,
sure.
What's the big thing you're going to gain?
Uh-huh.
Now the whole mainland of Europe is... colored this specific thing on my
map.
My map, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Calm down.
But Switzerland
Mr.
has
Kaiser.
that advantage of being very
prime minister
defensible from like a military standpoint. Like it'd be a nightmare to think about trying to take it over, right? Whereas,
why?
Mountains and...
Oh, you're talking about Switzerland now. I thought you said Fejan.
Oh, no. That's the point I'm making, is that in the case Fejan doesn't really have that. They don't have like an Iserlohn fortress or whatever,
okay. Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm just thinking about it from the point of why would you when you don't gain anything other than the corridor opening up, really.
Right.
That's it.
Like, unless it's something where it's like, then the money's coming towards us instead of you guys, and then it, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's how it works.
No.
But we have Reinhardt and Hildegard von Mariendorf's conversation, which is, in my opinion, my favorite bit of this episode. I really liked the Baltic stuff, like specifically, because it was kind of that back and forth. But you could tell that Reinhardt would at times start to leave the conversation. And he would start talking about the past. And how Rudolph the Great's, bellows were like thunder.
But it was
all hot sound and no substance.
Right, just useless in the end.
No energy. I won't be like that. What do you think?
Right.
And she's like, about the thing. It's kind of the acknowledgement when you have a person in the room. And this is something that I think is either wonderful that they're doing this, but let me know what you think about this. Are they setting up Reinhardt's madness descent? This is a very long kind of thing here, but basically just this is an example of where his youthful idealism is kind of getting a little bit grayed out, if you will, and she's just kind of letting him talk himself out. And then once he asks her a question or says something kind of note that is demanding a response, then she makes sure to direct the conversation onto a thing that is more
like
helpful, worthwhile in that regard, because she's totally listening and absorbing all the things that he's saying.
Right. Because
it would be dumb if she wasn't.
I think that's definitely a part of it because like when I was tracking along with the conversation, I was hoping that he was talking about the whole "what are those two doing here" kind of a thing, not actually asking her, "What do you think of me as a ruler?" kind of a thing, after just saying, "Yeah, I'm not going to be like that," because that's not much of it. It's a loaded question, right?
Right.
And you don't want the person closest to you in this, sort of political situation to feel like they have to force feed you answers, So, but he ended up agreeing with that and being like, "Yes, that's what I meant," So maybe maybe it's something that Reinhardt didn't realize he was kind of doing, or maybe he was testing her. I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, I just like how that whole little monologue that he gave, she responded once with basically just agreeing that, I kind of think that is how his bellows were described and what historians thought about him. But he kind of makes a point of like, I won't be like that. And he kind of looks at her like, it's like a quick little thing of just like, I have to assume on some level that he is aware of what he's doing in those kind of little waxing moments. And yet those kinds of little things start to give me the vibe of someone who's starting to disassociate. Just a little bit.
A bit of paranoia starts to set in.
Just a little bit of, I will make the greatest civilization in history.
Right. Oh God. Yeah.
You know what I'm. Yeah.
And the thing is that if Reinhardt ends up going that angle, because on the one hand we have that in this episode or in this scene, right? In this scene within the episode is something that actually made me very concerned for Reinhardt, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I hope that's not what's actually going on here. We end up having Hildegard go and talk to his sister later, and that's great.
Right.
But then we also have something where Reinhardt shows his extreme, hopefully, competence in his conversation with Baltic, where he's like, no, cut through the bullshit. Like, let's actually, talk shop here, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of like the old Reinhardt that we would expect, right? Where he's really smart, he's on top of things, But if the previous thing in the scene with Hilda is something where he didn't realize he was doing that, or maybe he tells himself that he wasn't doing that, or he's seeing the signs that he might turn into, Rudolph, yeah. But he says, I won't do that. That's kind of a little bit of self-deception there, right? If he's just sort of ignoring the evidence, that is something to seriously just avoid, right? That he can't just casually avoid it. It takes actual serious time and effort.
For sure.
Then that's a great contradiction and potential for chaos and all kinds of wonderfully awful things to happen in the future when you have someone that still has that competence and that area,
Right.
but then there are other areas where they've got a blind spot.
Right. In some ways, the idea of this episode being named Thunder fits really well with the idea of there being a lot of subterfuge and really loud projections of specific things that you'd assume would be more quiet. It's almost like the idea of there being the rumblings of a storm. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, where's the lightning going to strike?
Right, yeah.
And it's the realization of you can't predict where the lightning is going to strike. Mm-hmm. You just know that it will. It's coming. Or in some ways, it already came. That's why you're hearing the thunder.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it's something where it might already be too late. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I think is rather cool. And I want to believe this specifically because I like a story where all three factions in play are effective. Not one is kind of, piggybacking on one of the other two.
Sure.
So Fejon here is trying to stir up dissent and build some roots specifically in the Empire for when the Empire takes the war back to the Alliance. Even if their plan fails, Fejon still gets an empire that is warmongering and will feed into their financial war machine.
If you can't make money during war, you just can't make money.
But in this case, what I think is really just really sick about all this is that these two kind of nobodies in the story thus far, Landsberg and Schumacher, which I went back to check on episode 22 because of the stuff with Conrad, which is really cool. Is like, oh my god, that was the little kid.
Talk about seeding a character way back.
But I can't believe I didn't clue in really quickly that Landsberg was that one noble that was just like, hey, I've got the same kind of haircut, I guess, as Flegel, but I'm like more like pallid and weak, frail-looking boy.
I just sort of stand around and don't say anything, but I'm in the shots with
I think there was a scene where he did say something, but I'm not exactly sure. But then him and Schumacher, who are, I would say, pretty much sacrificial lambs if this goes a specific way, because if they realize that they are basically being set up not just to fail, but to instigate basically a war, and as Schumacher called it, an historical step back.
Yep.
I could see him taking a look at this and going, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
like, what if they just buggered off to
I don't think they will, but
I
know what you mean, but what if, let's go the other angle entirely. Like, what if this is a thing where he sees this as a good thing, becomes all patriotic for the Empire all over again, and Reinhard, or even if it's not Fejon, Reinhard and Fejon or one or the other just kind of goes, no reward, no nothing. You did your job. Now we need you to be a scapegoat for the Alliance to execute, maybe you'll go over to the Alliance and there'll be some cool things there. But I don't see this as ending really well for either of them.
But what's interesting about this, though, is that this is more interaction between the three sides, right? Because, a 1v1 conflict, there's only so many ways they can interact, right? With a 1v1v1 kind of free-for-all Mexican standoff, whatever you decide to have it be.
Good, bad, and the ugly.
Good, bad, and the ugly. You can have all kinds of things happen. But one of the things that I love that they're doing here is that they're making it so that the conflict between all those three different parties is all crisscrossed, complicated. You have people from the Empire going to Fejon, then going back to the Empire, and then they're going to go to the Alliance, and then you have people from Fejon that went to the Empire, and and then people from the Empire that went to the Alliance, and all sorts of stuff is happening here. So if Schumacher and Landsberg end up taking, the Kaiser to the Alliance, when are they going to meet Yang? And then Yang's going to be like, oh, they're having you do this? Oh, I think that they might be trying to do such, and such, and such, know? And then, it gets even more complicated.
Yep. The fact that we have this callback with Conrad, you and I kind of made a specific observation regarding him and how he was brought in here.
Which might be nothing.
It might be nothing.
But it might be something very big. So tinfoil hat.
Yeah, just the fact that I'm trying to find the actual line.
There was. But basically,
There. Yeah, Anna Rose was asked by someone to take in this kid.
Right.
And this is Legend of the Galactic Heroes, where they bring a call back to a kid that was on a supply ship that nearly got vaporized because it was accidentally keeping
it was
a specific
blocking the escape
from
advancement,
in the opposite direction of the enemy that they were going to make.
Yeah.
And this boy showed some heroic courage and most of the people on this ship, I believe, died. But if we're just setting up a character that doesn't exist right now to be like, I just took someone in.
Oh, yeah.
And this is someone who is next to the most important character in the story, arguably sister.
Yeah. Well, and also,
maybe I'll reserve judgment for now, but I see something there. Yeah.
This is my thought process on this. One, the move seems too simple for Fejon in this setup.
Which one?
The whole setup of like letting it slip, and then it's like, of course it's Fejon, and that whole thing.
Well, it was supposed to be simple,
right. But I'm looking for the way that Fejon still wins over the Empire, not just
they have other not just in general things involved with this.
So the whole idea of security being brought in. Oh, okay, cool, yeah. Now, I'm sure Reinhard is going to make sure that security is all good and loyal and would never be bought by anybody. Yeah. But then I think, when is the security going to be needed, in the future?
Right.
And in order for it to be as exciting as possible, it doesn't fully work, which also works into the whole thing of Kier Heiss is gone now, right? And Kier Heiss was the one that was keeping her safe before.
Dude, that's like saying Mariendorf is a spy, dude. That's the kind of level of theory crack this is at that point.
But what if there was something there, and that's why someone specifically asked her to take this kid in?
I'm not thinking about it from that angle. I'm not thinking about it from that angle. This is something you're thinking way too political. I'm thinking from the standpoint of just someone who doesn't like Reinhardt and all them, just wants someone that they could potentially manipulate that's close to Anna Rose. Doesn't have to be something that's connected to the Fejon.
It doesn't have to be.
Plot.
Yeah.
No, if anything, I think that because Mariendorf has set this up here, this is where, if anything, she'll need to be moved away from this place at some point so that we can get that clear differentiation of here she was safe. And now she's being forced to leave that place. Yeah. And thus, she won't be safe.
And does there come a point where she stops being a sister to Reinhard and instead ends up being someone to basically keep in a box?
I think if anything,
like not that extreme.
But... No, I don't think so. If anything, I think she'll end up becoming at some point some kind of political force. Okay. Like if anything, she'll be someone who will be on Reinhardt's like group of advisors that's
that would be awesome.
Super like not public, kind of group of people.
Right.
Like Hildegard Mariendorf, she's more public. She's way more political in that regard. And if anything, I could see Anna Rose at some point being forced in some ways to give up her lifestyles. They said that so many times.
Yeah.
It's like, she won't be forced to do that. She won't be forced to do that. She won't be forced to do that. I'm like, say it one more time.
Yeah.
And it's a Bloody Mary, and the thing's going to show up, and it's going to be like, you summoned me. And then now it's Anna Rose's time to be, called to the front lines of intrigue and all that. That's more the angle I would see going on here. I do think that there is still something there. I think you're on your bloodhound nose is sniffing out something. I just don't think it's as straightforward as Fejon.
Sure.
Because let's think about it. How many enemies has Reinhard made thus far?
A lot.
The universe. Like literally almost everyone is his enemy.
The only one that he hasn't quite made an enemy of is maybe Yang, even though he has, but it's not
he's not Yang and him are enemies.
No, definitely
Yang
enemies.
And him are enemies.
No, definitely enemies, but it's still like a frenemies thing where they would definitely play chess together.
No, Mariendorf is quite literally, I would say right now,
the only friend he has.
The only friend he has.
Yeah, and that's how Oberstein isn't really.
Even his sister. Like that's the depressing thing right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
And especially as we kind of do stuff with the admirals, showing that they are loyal, but they also have discontent, doubts, and desires, ambitions. Yeah. Okay, so that kind of covers, I would say, the majority of things in the episode. Having Schumacher kind of catch on how quickly to things aren't going as they should. I really liked that it was something that he went to go do without hesitation. There's something about him being a soldier and like a competent soldier. And I liked how Reinhardt kind of had that little remark of, oh, a captain in his 30s.
He must be good.
Did he do some feat of battle or something like that? Because he's assuming that it was like some achievement, not necessarily his skills or anything. Just he did something cool, and thus he got promoted higher than he should. And it's like, no, this is unprecedented. There was no specific thing. He was a rear officer kind of thing.
He just must be really good.
And he just must be really good. And it's like, what a shame. The way Reinhardt was like, wow, that's just that. I love that about Reinhardt. I love that. It is such a way to make me care about the other characters in his circle because he does care about them.
Yes.
In a utilitarian kind of way.
Definitely.
Primarily.
But the thing is that utilitarian, like, yes, there's the negative aspects of it, but it also stems from a point of, in some ways, humility, because you realize that you can't do everything yourself.
True.
And since Reinhardt is in a position right now where he is the most powerful person in the galaxy, right?
Definitively.
The fact that he still is able to acknowledge the talents of those that are not himself is very important, because he does need people around him. The fact that he hasn't really been rewarding Ruenthal and Mittermeier very much lately, they have noticed, you know? So
Prime Minister, Lord, Emperor, Dictator of the Galactic
Mother of
Empire,
Dragons, and
young 20s, and he's like, wow, Captain, young 30s, he must be pretty impressive. That's just a cool bit of characterization, because someone who's done so much in such a short amount of time could just see anyone that's not them as like, you know.
Right, exactly.
Pitiful mortals.
You dare approach me. Like he's what, 21, 22, 23? Like, God, when I was his age, if thinking about
we were writing fan fiction.
Well, right, but like thinking about like what I myself would, be doing if I was in a position of like ultimate power like that, it'd be like, oh God,
don't give a young 20-year-old man that much power. I'm sorry.
It makes me think of
especially one in our day and age.
Exactly. Like totally different thing. And Reinhardt is very competent, so thankfully we don't have to worry about that. But it's like, when do the little things?
And he has a decent head on his shoulders.
Yeah, he does have a decent head on his shoulders. But it makes me think of like in Parks and Rec, the whole thing of like Ben Wyatt with like the when he became mayor of the one town, it just went horribly. Like just things that you wouldn't necessarily predict that can become issues because the person doesn't have everything.
Yep.
And there might be something really specific that is a fatal flaw that you don't realize.
Yep. I also, just to cap off this episode's discussion, I really liked how quickly and logically the characters broke down what Fejon's plan was.
Yep.
I really liked the way in which they told the audience the exposition that you got previously was wrong. And it's something that's, I would say, something that's really risky when a show or a story does this.
Sure.
Is whenever a show contradicts its own exposition, you run a dangerous game of the audience then going, well, wait a minute.
How can I trust any of the
How can I trust any of the exposition now?
Yeah.
And what it was them showing, well, wait a minute, let's look at these things logically based on what we know of the characters. And then we're like, crap, there's 150 characters so far.
All right.
What's the characterization that we've gotten on these two?
Yeah.
And he's like, Landsberg is a romantic. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's very clearly established.
Schumacher, is not. He's a soldier. But where do these two, motivation-wise lead into this? Because killing you, that's just going to destabilize things.
But exactly.
Right. And I can't believe I didn't doubt that.
Yeah,
times,
because
I was
Fejon, chaos is not good for money. organized chaos is good for money.
Right. But but
like,
I would say that killing Reinhardt wouldn't instigate immediate chaos. It would.
But in the long term,
it would hurt
them.
It would hurt them as well as most. I would say everyone in the Empire at the very least.
Right.
But yeah, the idea of they're actually coming to abduct the Kaiser.
Yeah.
So that they can set up the war.
Right.
And have it really last until the Empire wins.
Yep.
Because if Reinhardt has mobilized in a very dictatorial, utilitarian kind of way the entire Empire, and yet, they're not necessarily wanting to fight, he gives them a little false flag thing that gives them a reason to fight. That's never worked in history before.
Nope, not at all.
That's not been a thing that's happened over and over again throughout modern history. But I mean, who knows, right? But the act of them doing this, I loved the way that they figured it out. I just believe the confidence of Mariendorf. And then Reinhardt, we already believed his competence, but this just reinforces it.
One of the things that really bothers me in anime is whenever there's exposition and people come to conclusions that even when they spell out their reasoning why, I don't believe it.
You shouldn't have been able to deduce
you shouldn't
that.
have been able to deduce that. That might have been one option, maybe, but you definitely wouldn't have come to that conclusion with any certainty, right?
It's a very tough thing when I'm showing anime to people that don't watch anime, because oftentimes when you watch a lot of anime, you just kind of accept those things because it's a way of keeping the pacing
moving along, right?
But for a lot of people that I've shown anime to, they literally stop the episode. They're like, how'd they figure that out?
Right.
And I was like, they're smart. And they were like, no.
What about
I'm
this?
Smart. They were like, I'm smart, and I came up with 5 reasons that they would come up with a completely different thing.
And none of them were that. Right.
Right. And it's one of those things of where you kind of have to go, okay, yes, but to be fair, that's not necessarily as entertaining. Right. And I would argue that statement, even that it's not as entertaining, is not always true.
Right. In some cases it is.
In some cases it is, for the purpose of expediting the pace and what have you.
Because it does take longer to do it, do a good job with it like we got in this episode.
But I'll tell you, characterization comes most often when characters are failing or struggling. Not when they're just succeeding because hashtag I am very smart.
God, I want an anime. It's totally not related to the episode, so I'll keep it very short. But I would love to see an anime at some point where it's about the person that always jumps to the conclusions, and then they have to
wait,
reconcile.
Isn't that just me?
No, right? But basically what
in
we
my
do,
theories,
right? But then they have the certainty of I know that it is definitely this 200 IQ big brain, all according to Keikaku.
Jacob, that's just Semblance of Sanity, the anime. That's just us making theories.
But seeing it happen with an actual anime character where they then have to realize I was totally wrong.
An anime about 2 brothers wanting to start a YouTube channel.
Oh no. The dream is collapsing.
So y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get an early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us and the community there about this show, about anime in general, and you can also talk with Jacob about the sci-fi novel that he wrote.
That's right. I wrote a sci-fi novel, in case you haven't heard by now, 36 episodes into this sci-fi anime. But yeah, it's called Battle Lines. It's on Amazon if you want to check it out. The link is in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all
next time.